All right, so for this week's project, starting off the year 2021, we're going to be taking a look at this Pioneer. This is an SX-727 AM/FM receiver. This would have been from the early mid-70s, I believe. And at last check on these models, I don't recall Pioneer stamping the word laser with a Z in the lower right-hand corner. So that's something I guess we'll have to look into. But this unit does come from a new customer via a family member, and I didn't get any information with this other than here's your estimate charge, please check it out. The unit appears in not great shape. A lot of the veneer is peeled off of the cabinet, but still in all a very fine old receiver, and we'll see if we can check into it and find out what's going on with it. Our intro music this week, we're checking out the 1971 album by the band Yes, just simply entitled the Yes Album. And this is one of my favorite albums by this band and one of my favorite songs. Let's check out a little bit of Yours Is No Disgrace, and then we'll get started on the Pioneer. All right, as we come back in, let's have a look at the control knobs and buttons they provided for us on this one. Starting on the far left here, you're going to get this combination power switch / speaker switch. And as discussed in a previous video, I'm not so sure I'm married to the idea of these two switches being the exact same switch. I don't like the fact that we go straight from power on right into A speakers. Maybe if we went from power on to speakers off, that might be a little bit more appealing to me. But as it stands, I'm not a huge fan of this. But we have quite a few selections here. Of course, speakers A, speakers off altogether, speakers B, and then of course Pioneer adding the third set for C speakers. And then you're going to get some switching options between A and B or A and C. We have a 1/4-inch headphones jack followed by bass and treble controls, and these are independent left and right per control. There's 2 sections to this. Then you're going to get your low and high filters, followed by your balance switch. Then moving our way over to the right a little bit towards the middle, you're going to get FM muting along with a -20 dB audio muting switch, a volume control, loudness, tape monitors 1 and 2, a mode switch for stereo or mono, and then of course the selector switch for all your normals, A, mono FM, auto FM, 2 phonos, a mic jack in case you want to turn your receiver into a public address system, and then an auxiliary input. It looks to me, from what I can tell, the tuning dial pointer is moving, so it looks like we're good there. I'm not sure what this whole LAZER laser is all about. Maybe just a, we've had a few beers, let's glue something to the front of this. I'm not sure, but again, as we get into it a little bit more, and perhaps I'll have a chance to speak directly with the customer and we can find out if that's something he wants to keep intact or wants to get rid of. So let's flip it around and have a look at the back. All right, carrying on from the back of the unit, we'll start up the top here. You get your 2 inputs for your 2 turntables. There's a ground screw right below that. The auxiliary input. Tape 1 does have a DIN connection in case you don't want to use the RCAs. And tape 2, they have this labeled as 4-channel in and 4-channel out. In the event you would have a 4-channel tape deck, You can use tape 2 for that input. A preamp out, main in, and the jumpers are still there. And then we get below to the speaker connections. Of course, Pioneer used those specialized speaker plugs for these. Also, Realistic did that early on back in the day. I'm not seeing either pair for A, B, or C here, so hopefully the customer has those. If he does not, then I think the last time I checked, if you wanted a pair of these used on eBay, they were about 40 bucks, maybe 50. So hopefully he has a set. While we're doing our testing, we can just jumper in or stick some wires in these holes to take care of the testing we need to do. But that's definitely not a way you want to permanently hook up speakers to this thing. We do have a rod antenna for the AM. It's all fine, still in one piece. And then of course you have external connections for both AM and FM. And they're going to give you 3 outlets here, 1 switched and 2 unswitched. And of course, if you're using anything that's got a polarized cord on it, polarized plug on it, it's not going to work here. So that's looking to be about it on the back of the unit. Did notice that this cabinet looks a little tweaked. I don't know if there's a leg issue on one side or not, but I don't think the bench is that unlevel. I think it's an issue with the unit itself. So we'll look into that. So I think the first thing before we do anything, let's get the lid off of it. I'll get it hooked up and we'll check for any DC on the speakers. And then from that point, if we're good, we'll get some speakers hooked up and see what it'll do or what it won't do. So give me a moment for that and we'll pick back up. All right, so picking back up with you, went ahead and got the top of the unit off as well as the bottom so we can kind of get a good look at things. Pull the little black cage off of the amplifier section and found that all of our NEC outputs are still present there. Probably won't be able to see them, the numbers on them, but I believe it's a 2SD 388 and a 2SA 649, I believe. And from what I can tell here, it does not appear to be anything burned it up down in there, or at least not in the area I can see very well anyway. And overall, the whole inside of the unit looks fairly clean. There's a little bit of surface dust here, but nothing too terrible. Let me stand it up on the end. You can take a look at the bottom of it. First thing I noticed when I got the bottom off of the unit is this heat sink laying here. Basically goes on that Sanyo transistor right there. They used a plastic screw, which I'm sure over time with the heat baking it becomes brittle and it came apart. Certainly doesn't look like anyone's been tampering with anything. This looks untouched and in pretty good shape. All the wiring still looks okay. So I went ahead and hooked it up and I'll show you what I seen. We'll layer back down here. Very surprised at this. All the lights are working and our protection relay clicked. But I'm not so sure I'm ready to just throw it upon the bench speakers. I think let's get out the test speaker. I'll jumper it in and we'll see if this thing will produce any sound. So give me a second for that and we'll come right back. All right, as we come back in, what I basically did here, we just took one of our burner speakers, jumpered in a couple of leads. There's basically just a common ground rail for each speaker. And right now I've got it tapped into, I believe, the left side. So let me show you what I found out here. Give us a minute for the protection. There it is.
I-74 approaching River Bridge. The new River Bridge, Illinois bound span is being built. So right now 3 lanes are open, Iowa bound on the bridge, 2 lanes open headed through Illinois. While that work goes on, 4th Avenue between 23rd and 19th.
So that's the right channel.
Closures until January 22nd. That's your Quad Cities total traffic.
Sponsored by Discover. Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover is accepted at 99.
Now check out this left channel.
More at discover.com/yes. 2020 news. Limitations apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob and Tom.
Tiger King Joe Exotic has reached out to Kim Kardashian West for help getting a presidential pardon.
Volume all the way down. And you can hear that we definitely have some static here. Let's turn it back up. This is definitely why I didn't want to put it just directly on the bench speakers. Even with the protection relay cutting on, we do got some spiking here, and this is sounding like it's coming from the preamp. And if you pull the jumpers out of the back, it's dead silent. So I think the next thing we probably want to do, it's pretty loud. So I think the next thing I probably want to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull the jumpers out, and let's jack in that channel from the preamp into the signal tracer and just confirm that it's doing it there, and that'll eliminate the main amp. I don't think this is a main amp issue. If I remember right, some of these older ones, there are some transistors there, either made by Hitachi or Mitsubishi, that will develop this problem over time. So let's go ahead and get the signal tracer involved. Confirm it's in the preamp only, but yet when you pull the jumpers out, it's completely dead silent. So let's do that real quick, and we'll just confirm that, and then we'll move on. All right, as we pick back up, basically just ran an RCA cable from the left channel preamp out into the signal tracer direct in, and here's what we got. So that pretty much lets us know we're definitely in the preamp on this one, and it's not going to be easy to get to. We got our board here, tone control, preamp issue, or preamp components. We're going to need to get that out. So we're going to have to start dismantling the front of it. So I think I'll start working on that. There's some, we pull these knobs off. There's some screws here, or hex nuts, I guess you would say. That's kind of holding the face on. And I'm going to go ahead and start dismantling that. We'll see if we can get down to this board and see if we can isolate which one it is. It's probably just one or two maybe causing the issue. And once we get that figured out, then from that point, we'll probably go ahead and change the same transistors on the opposite side so we don't have issues there. So give me a moment for that, and we'll start the dismantling process. All right, so I'm picking back up with you. Going to be a couple days later. Put it aside to take care of some other things, but I did go ahead and get our control board out with all our controls, which does have some preamp tone control circuitry on it. There's only a total of 4 transistors on this actual board, and after doing a little heat and cold sensitivity testing, I didn't really come up with anything on this board. I didn't see anything really reacting after doing those type of tests, and so I decided to move on a little further. Noticing that we have another small circuit board right up here, and here's where I really found some, some pretty active transistors that would respond to the cold and the heat. Let's go ahead, we'll flip on the signal tracer here. And let's go ahead and see what we can do with the freeze mist. Seems to quiet it right down, just like there's nothing wrong with it. It definitely makes a difference. It gets to the point to where, if you apply enough thermal spray in that area, these obviously for the left channel, it'll quiet that right down to hardly anything. And I did notice that these are tap sensitive as well. You can actually, that center transistor right there, if you want to just kind of take it and wiggle it a little bit, it'll start to react as well. Let me see if I can show you that. Now we'll heat it up a little bit. And that is not a cold solder joint. I pulled that board out and the solder is perfectly fine behind that. So what I really feel like is I feel like this center transistor is really the one that's kind of causing the issue. Now there's a very good valid argument. All three of these transistors are exactly the same. And if I remember right from what I've seen, these are a 2SC 1312 or a 1213. I don't remember. Let's see if we can get in there and find out. Yeah, 2SC 1312. And so I think what I want to do, just for the sake of the video, let's go ahead and replace this one that's causing the issue, or the one that I feel like is causing the issue. Let's see if we can go ahead and get the audio cleaned up. And having this board out was definitely not something that we didn't need to do, because we're going to need to clean all these controls, and you can't get to those controls without removing that board. And so we'll go ahead and spray the controls out real good. All the switches and the push button switches and the rotary controls, we'll get all those cleaned up real good. And this board does have 4 of those transistors on it. And these parts are fairly inexpensive. So I think at the very least, I know I have a couple. So I'm going to go ahead and change the one that I think is causing my problem. But before we completely wrap this up 100%, we'll want to change all of those transistors. So let's go ahead and see if we can get one put in here and get it working stable without the influence of heat or freeze mist, and we'll pick back up from there. So give me a moment for that. All right, so I'm picking back up with you. I'm gonna fast forward probably about 5 hours later. Went ahead and swapped out our one suspected transistor, the 2SC 1312. And I only had one transistor that was a usable substitute for this. And I'll see if I can get you up here. 2SC 2240, definitely a usable substitute for that. The pinout is different than the original transistor, so you have to invert a couple of pins. But this is what we got. Still running it through left channel only through our signal tracer.
The newest restaurant in Eldridge, Iowa is now open. Come and experience authentic Italian.
Of course, we don't have the right channel connected, just the left.
Of appetizers, pasta, steak, pork loin, pizza, salmon, sandwiches, burgers, soup.
And we got a nice clean audio there, no trouble whatsoever. Went ahead and routed the laptop into this. Let's go to the auxiliary. I went ahead and started cleaning the controls along the way here. And I think I had a total count of about 10 transistors that I'm going to go replace in this. Going to take care of the 6 on this board, and then there's 4 on this board too. We're going to take care of all those before we wrap everything up. And that way we should be good to go. I'm going to look through the amp section of this. I don't think there's any of those 2SC 1312s in the amp section, but we'll double check that. And I'll probably order, I'm not sure what I'm going to use as a substitute for these. Probably not the 2240. I'll consult my friend over at the shop. I'm sure he has a recommended substitute for that. But it all is working very good. This is going to be real nice once we get it cleaned up. I've already spoke to the customer, or actually I spoke to his brother, and he said go ahead and take care of this. And they originally thought, or the customer originally thought, that the laser that was written or glued onto the front panel was part of the receiver. So we're going to remove that during part 2 and get that all cleaned up and get this all put back together. Sounded real nice here. Even through the signal tracer, it sounds pretty good. Well, I think we'll go ahead and just kind of leave it off right here for part 1. In part 2, I will include in the video changing out some of these transistors. I didn't do it with this one. I was kind of in a little bit of a time crunch today, so I just wanted to swap it real fast. I knew after I swapped it that I wanted to let the unit sit for a while. That way we could make sure that it just wasn't a fluke that I picked that particular one, but that center transistor was very reactive with heat and cold, and so I was pretty sure that that was the one. So I think we're going to be good on this one. Once we get this faceplate, get it cleaned up and get this back together, this is going to look real good, and it's going to sound real nice too. And like I said, I've been kind of cleaning the controls as I went along, so got those nice and quiet now for the most part. Still got to work on some of the push button switches, but everything's sounding pretty good. And of course our right channel, we'll switch it over here. Our right channel's still working too. Well, I want to thank you guys very much. I appreciate you checking out the video this week, our first official video of year 2021. And at the time of finishing this video, we have 999 subscribers. And, you know, during some reading on YouTube way back when, it was written somewhere, I read somewhere where getting to the first 100 and getting to the first 1,000 is the hardest part of trying to get a YouTube channel started. And of course, it makes me wonder about the guy that has 99,999 subscribers trying to reach that 100K mark. But thank you all very much. I appreciate your hanging in there while we work on these things, these beautiful old vintage pieces of audio and video, as those projects have picked up some steam. With the, you know, last year's arrival of all these nicer JVC VCRs sent in from George. And I do believe we have another one of those coming pretty soon. But as always, I appreciate you checking out the videos, and I appreciate you checking out the channel if you're just a first-time visitor here. So thanks very much, and we'll pick up next week on part 2 of the Pioneer SX-727.